Thank you, sir.
Right.
All right, we're bringing it home. This is it. We're bringing the energy. Now, everybody's here on screen, but I think they're either going to be here on screen.
Let's put them up
right
here so I can introduce. Well, first of all, he's here in person. James
Yes.
Altucher, famous because of his podcast, but before this was one of the people who developed some of the original computer systems that started to beat human beings in chess, became an investor, podcaster. We worked together at HBO when he was building websites, and then had a career building websites for lots and lots of people, and then went through a series of companies and has been a stand-up comedian. So I always admire the multidimensional James Altucher. I don't know if we can get the other panelists up on the screen up here.
We're working.
But I'll go through. Michelle Kwon is with Runway. They're a provider of services to, I guess I'll sit if that's the case. They're provider of services for post-visual effects using AI. Jonathan Younger is a producer, works at Millennium, but is also the CEO of Arcana, another AI-based company. And Erik Barmack is part of the Ankler Network and is a producer in his own right and writes one of the most amazing columns that I always read, and am always astonished by his insight into what is happening in Hollywood in the world of AI. So I appreciate all these people being here, because I think the thing that we want to talk about is that there is a disruption and a change going on, and people are struggling in order to, how do you make sense of it? What are the tools that are going to be important? What are the skills that are going to be important? From a Pepperdine Grazidio perspective, the thing that we're interested in is, what does the curriculum need to change so we prepare the students of the future for that world, so that when they get into the employment space, they understand and have all the skills. So let's start with Michelle. I think if you can just take us through, like, what are the things that you're focused on right now? What's the mission of Runway? Where do you think you integrate into the overall ecosystem? And what are the risks that you see in terms of execution on that?
Yeah, well, I might take the whole 30 minutes if I answer all parts of that question. So I'll try to go through it quickly. But first of all, thank you, Carmi, for having me. It's great to be a part of this panel. Runway is an applied AI research company focused on leveraging our own in-house foundational models and applying it for use cases deeply within media and entertainment, but also outside of media and entertainment. There are so many people, whether within an enterprise, as an individual, as a student, who create content every day leveraging Runway. And that's really what we're focused on, is building really large scale, generalizable, powerful tools that can be leveraged by the most high-end AAA studios, some of whom, obviously you work with, Carmi, but also with individuals who maybe aren't as fluent in software or in creative tooling. This technology is that powerful that everyone on both ends can use it. So we're really focused on not just building the core technology that's able to power that experience, but also creating a flexible product in which the most fluent, the most sophisticated, but also the newest users can use at the same time. So that's our biggest challenge today. And it seems like it's an exciting area where a lot of other companies now have started to invest time and resourcing here. We've been building Runway for about a decade now, before the term generative AI existed. And we were running alone for so long, and now we're running alongside some of the largest companies in the world. And so for us, it's really important that we continue to be first principle thinkers and move really quickly. Speed, I think, is one of the greatest, and agility is one of the greatest advantages that you have in the age of AI.
Thank you. So, Jonathan, you're using the tools, but you're also creating tools. From both a producer perspective,
recording in progress,
and from an Arcana perspective, just take us through, like, how do you navigate the challenges in your world, and where do you see those opportunities?
Well, first of all, I navigate the challenges in my world with a lot of coffee. That's number one. And number two, the challenges in my world are what led to the creation of Arcana. I'm in the independent movie business, and I've been in the movie business for nearly 20 years. I work in the pre-sale model, and we've been seeing, at least over the last 7 years, there's been a lot of issues with getting movies financed in the pre-sale world and getting distribution. Budgets were going up and revenues weren't matching. So we knew, I make movies that are like kind of like you do, Carmi, in the TV world, with very big visual effects budgets generally, and a lot of action. And I had to figure out a way to lower those budgets. And for me, it started about 4 years ago when I saw Midjourney on Discord when I was making Hellboy. And no AI was used in Hellboy at the time, but it was around that time where we found basically I could chat with a bot and make an image, but it couldn't use it in a workflow. It didn't make sense for us, for what we need in the movie business. And so I realized with my co-founder that if we want to create something professional, it's all about honing and having control of AI. And that's what it's all about. But can you, and then we asked ourselves, can we create a model agnostic platform, which we did with Arcana. So Arcana today is an ecosystem that has nearly every single model, including our own, inside of the platform, in 5 different suites that have to do with stills and video. Actually, Runway is inside of our platform. We're super happy with it. We love it, and so do a lot of our customers. And kind of like to what Michelle said before, we have all kinds of people using it. I've been navigated it. When I started to get into AI, because I work in Hollywood, it was really, really taboo at the time. I remember I showed an earlier version of Arcana even to the MPA, and they basically slammed the door on my face and said, "You're trying to destroy all of us." Like, in so many words. A year later, the MPA started paying me to consult for them on AI education. So there you go. I don't think AI has anything to do with destroying the movie business. I think that there's wonderful, wonderful things about these tools, and they are just tools. I still think creativity, artist-driven AI is what's at the forefront of this. Writers are still needed. Creators are still needed. Knowledge is still needed. If you have but the whole process is now being democratized. So someone who didn't have a budget to create something special can now do that. And I'm seeing that across the board. And I'm also seeing it in the education space. You mentioned education earlier. Arcana is going into schools across the nation at the moment because we have all of the models in one place. And I'm watching kids start to think big again because they didn't think they'd have an opportunity to enter these industries. So, I mean, I can keep going on and on about it, but I've been navigating it by being able to apply it to my own films and seeing how much it helps us be able to help our bottom line and be able to turn around and sell to a distributor for a number that now makes sense for them, that they don't have to think twice or say, wait and see. Because the more as an indie we hear wait and see, the more we can't make product. So that's been helping us immensely.
That's great. So, Erik, you talk to a lot of people in terms of your reporting, and obviously, you're engaged as a producer in thinking about, like the content model and the health of Hollywood. In terms of being cautious and going slow versus seizing the opportunity and moving forward at a reasonable pace, where do you think Hollywood is? Where should it be? What's your recommendation?
I mean, look, there's an element of this where I agree with my panelists that these are tools and that this is driving efficiency in a Hollywood. So script coverage, subtitling and dubbing, VFX processing. If all of these things can make Hollywood 15 or 20% better or faster, then you can sort of right-size the economics of an industry that's been heading in the wrong direction for a while and create a more healthy ecosystem. So I think that's sort of like the positive, practical case. It's not replacing creatives and so on. The more doom and gloom dystopian version of this is that you have to look at the relative size of big tech versus big media. And big tech is trillions of dollars in market cap, right? So Microsoft is a $4 trillion company or something like that. Apple, Google, Alphabet, and so on. They could buy, if they wanted to, every studio in Hollywood and not really have their balance sheet dented. And so when you see big tech coming into a space that's a content space, and I'm talking about OpenAI, I'm talking about ChatGPT, I'm talking about Sora, the new browser, as examples, you have to sort of say that they're playing a game on a much bigger scale, which isn't just to make Hollywood more efficient. It's to companies of that size are trying to massively grow new lines of businesses that are, and so on the one hand, I think Hollywood is reasonable. Let's try these tools. Let's try to make this business more efficient. On the other hand, the industry is really small, and maybe we're not even really paying attention to the most disruptive elements of how AI is going to affect content.
Yeah, so James, from an investor perspective and also, I guess, from a science perspective of what is possible, when you look at the landscape, and I think Erik makes a really good point about how small the industry is compared to the tech industry, and one of the things I think about is do all the tech companies just buy studios so they can ingest all the library legally into some AI model that then spits out Storybot? What is that possible? Is that like an overblown fear? And from an investor perspective, like where would you place your bets?
Yeah, and everybody brings up such great points. Like the other panelists have brought up the amazing tools that are being built, that they're building, that you can use now. If you're in a creative, you can use these tools to make movies, shows, whatever your creative efforts are. You're not limited anymore, is what they're saying, by the agent, the producer, the executive, the marketing people, the budgets, all of these things that have kept out many of the creatives, let's say 99% of the creatives in the world, all of those obstacles are going away. But there's this dystopian aspect that Erik mentions as well, that what's happening with big tech, what's happening with, when they control the tools of this creativity, will AI become as creative? So I'm an extremely lazy person. I will use AI for everything I can possibly use it for. If AI can do it, I'm not going to do it. If it makes my life better. If AI could just wake me up, exercise me somehow, order all my food because it knows my preferences, have my favorite shows waiting for me to binge watch all day long, I would just do it. And that's happening. That's going to happen. So, but I've been using AI a long time. I've been lazy for a long time. Going all the way back to my grad school days 35 years ago or 30 years ago. I was working on AI then. I got thrown out of grad school. Don't tell anybody. But the one thing I will say is AI can't, and Erik alluded to this, AI actually can't get good at writing. It's going to get good at videos. It's going to make better and better videos. Like Sora 2 is much better than Sora 1. Every new version of Midjourney is better than the version before. There's a billion minutes of video uploaded to YouTube every second or hour or whatever. So it has a lot of data that it could just get better and better on that. It's going to get better at sets. It might get better at creating actors with the correct micro expressions. We don't know. We'll see. But writing, you have to figure you need data to get better. In order for instance, a chess program to get better at chess, it needs a lot of chess games to look at played by better and better players. In particular, the best chess computers now only look at the games it plays because it's the best. They're the best chess programs ever, so they look at their own games and play themselves trillions of times, and they get an enormous amount of data to get even better. But think about writing. About half the writing on the internet now, who wrote it? AI, the last generation of AI. So it's only learning now on its own works of art. Like it's not really, it's going to plateau. There's diminishing returns of learning on its own writing, because the writing itself was not based on anything good. It was learning from, what I'm saying is there's only so many Hemingways, there's only so many examples of great script writing, maybe 100 great movies, 500 great movies, not a million or a trillion great movies for it to learn from. There's a billion minutes of video for it to learn from, but not a billion stories for it to learn from. So AI can't really get better at writing. So you ask what skill is important. The only skill is important. It's the same skill that's always been important, which is if you're creative and you use the tools available. So what are the tools? It's the tools these guys are developing. It's the tools you've heard about all day today. 100 years ago, it was using, mixing sound with film. Before that, it was film. After that, it was using color with film and sound and better editing tools. So you're always the most creatives will have the best chances if they know inside and out the tools. Those are basically the skills. The good thing is the obstacles are going away. Now, what about big tech owning everything? That is a problem. Who knows what the solution is? But there's one great historical example, which is the internet. So the internet in 1990 was dominated by, you heard it, or 1992, let's say, AOL, and then I don't know if you remember CompuServe, Prodigy. There was these kind of their own little fiefdoms of online communities, and they were separate and they were competing against each other. And they're all, by the way, dead now. Nobody owns them anymore. They're completely gone. And nobody owned the internet. The internet was open source. It was free. It was permissionless. Like anybody, it doesn't matter what kind of computer. You could have a Radio Shack computer or a, rest in peace, or a Apple computer or IBM PC. You could set up on the internet and just hook yourself in, set up a free web server created by Tim Berners-Lee, and you were up and running. So, and download a web browser made by a young Mark Andreessen at the time, and you were delivering content, surfing content on the web, on the internet for free. I think something similar is going to happen to AI. We don't know exactly how it will happen. I would not invest in OpenAI at a $500 billion valuation. Look at what's happened recently. Oracle invests in OpenAI, who promises to use Oracle databases, and then they all invest in NVIDIA, but only if NVIDIA then invests in OpenAI if you use NVIDIA chips. Like there's this giant circle jerk happening of AI companies owning other AI companies that promise to do business with each other. That's guaranteed to fail at some point. Like that, I don't want to say it's a bubble because AI is real and it's only going to grow and it's going to be a $100 trillion industry, but something is wrong with these big central, big giant AIs that it's unclear how they're going to get better and what data they're going to use. That aspect is good. Something's going to happen. And I think it'll be similar to what happened with the internet. So that's my answer.
That's great. Okay, so Michelle, to get really practical about this, I drive our head of post and visual effects crazy because I'm constantly asking him, when am I going to be able to cut an AI-based visual effects shot into one of our shows? What's your answer? What are the obstacles? And is this something that Runway can achieve now?
Yeah, we are very fortunate to work with many of the folks at Legendary. We have worked with several films, television shows that in final frame capacity that have either already been streamed, are in theaters, have been in theaters. And so the answer is yes, it is possible. The control aspect that Yoni was talking about has been one of the biggest areas where we've invested in time, because the folks who are working on post and in visual effects need pixel perfect control. They need to get 100%, not 98%, not 99.5%. They need to understand what 100% of what every pixel on any frame is doing. That's what they require. And AI hasn't really been there yet. And for context, as I'm sure everyone here knows, Runway was the first company to bring video generation to market commercially 2.5 years ago. So this technology has only been available for 2.5 years. And to think about how much progress there's been in that short period of time, I think is not only exciting, but should be an early indication of this is the worst the models will ever be. So if we're already being used in Final Frame, if we're already being used in post-production workflows, you can only imagine in the next 6 months, 12 months, 30 months, what those applications will look like. And it'll be past just for VFX and for post, but for much wider applications that anyone will be able to use. So I'm very excited for what this next stage of what the use cases will be.
So is the answer soon?
The answer is already.
Not right now.
Right now.
All right, I'm going to talk with our head of post and visual effects
Yeah.
because he continually says he's not convinced because it has to match what we're getting from all
Sure.
of our other vendors, and that's
Yep.
the issue is control, like you're saying, pixel perfect. All right,
Mm-hmm.
Yoni. So in the course of our first season of Monarch, Godzilla is on screen for 4 minutes because it's expensive to put Godzilla on screen. If I change that to 40 minutes, how does it affect storytelling? What do you think is all of a sudden possible if the cost of visual effects drops substantially? What will we see? What will the creative community's reaction be?
I think it would be a wonderful thing. I think it would open a new level of creativity that we haven't seen in a long time. I think people will want to take more creative risks because they're doing things more for a price. And I think creative risk is one of the things that's missing right now in the industry. I think creativity is at an all-time low in Hollywood. And I think that being able to bring these costs down, raise production value, and get studio level content out there based on, go figure, original ideas, hopefully, I think can bring creativity back to where it's supposed to be, in my opinion. It's not an opinion that a lot of people agree with, but it's what I truly think.
I think that's a great point because I think a lot of the risk aversion is in relation to cost. If the cost does come down, I think that's a good case for why it is a help for creativity.
Absolutely.
Okay, Erik, so one of the other panels we talked about how we're coming up on a new cycle of negotiations, WGA, SAG. All of these are going to be issues about, how do people protect their license? What is copyright? Is there something that you can see that should be beyond the WGA or SAG or any of the guilds area to negotiate? Is there something like governmental or something that needs to be rethought of in terms of copyright law in order to have a system that pays people for the use of their content, even if the payment goes to a large language model that then fractionalizes their work and then spits it out into some new work?
Yeah, at the Inkler, so we spend a lot of time kind of dealing with this existential dread and how do we even have a vocabulary around it. And one thing that came up a couple months ago was when ChatGPT put in this new model that allowed you to giblify your images or Pixarfy it. And so Studio Ghibli was like one of the great animation shops in Japan. It's probably, if you add up all the people that have worked there, it's over 1,000 years of experience, and it's a national treasure, right? Creating things like Totoro and others. And then overnight, you could take the Kennedy assassination and put it through this model and then create a Ghibli-like effect on some moment in American history that was sort of inappropriate for the style. And in some ways, it's theft of artistry, right? That this is a style that was developed. A Studio Ghibli scene, to do a 2-second clip in a crowded marketplace in one of their films would take 3 months to produce. And so that's creating value that is appreciated by people around the world that is suddenly degraded. And the problem is there's no real legal model or union protection model that would address that. It's it's viewed probably as just fair use of an artistic style. But we all know that that doesn't quite feel right. And so I think there's a couple things that need to be done. There needs to be some regulation. It's inevitable that there's going to be regulation. And there needs to be, at a minimum, ways of IDing who's in a particular, how a particular model is generating images or ideas, and where those models are coming from.
You've got a visitor.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'm sorry to cut you off. Are you? So, James, yeah.
Just to follow up on that, I think you're not really going to be able to solve the IP problem. I mean, maybe you can to some extent the way the music industry did, but the music industry didn't really solve it. Like, I listen to all music now on YouTube. I don't, for better or for worse, I just watch free music videos on YouTube. But musicians continue to make money. They use their creativity to have, to tour, to perform, and that's how they make their, the ones who are successful are that make hundreds of millions or tens of millions or millions of dollars, and the industry changed. And I think intellectual property is just going to change. It's going to become more open, more free. There's no way to really avoid that. And, newer content also is going to come out, like the Darman stuff and the stuff that's going on every day on TikTok that also is entertaining. But where studios can hold on to an advantage is just, again, being creative. Like how many people here have watched the TV show Bewitched from the 70s? Okay, fair number of people. How many people here have watched Mad Men? Guess what? You ever notice Don Draper and Darren were in the ad agency business at the same time? Why not have a show where they're working at the same ad agency? Might be a bad idea, might be a good idea, but here's something where movie studios could take content that they own, and again, maybe people can run it through AI and put it on a YouTube thing. But if you have the real creatives being hired by studios, then the studios have a chance to still compete and not spend any money, because they can sue everybody they want, but ultimately they're going to lose that battle. But at least if they have the creatives, they can make all the shows that they want with the resources they have, and continue to be more and more creative using content they've already developed.
I think my answer is the Don and Darren show could be good if somebody has a good idea of what to write about it.
Well, they probably wouldn't like each other very much.
ChatGPT.
So maybe there's a conflict there. I don't know.
All right. So in the business realm, looking at OpenAI and the way that they launched Sora 2, they didn't just deliver Sora 2. It came in a wrapper of a TikTok style social media site. I heard that they're going to go into shopping. Like, is this the next level of disintermediation where there's going to be an AI wrapper on everything, and then ultimately the same thing that Apple did with music just happens again with another wrapper placed on all of our services?
I don't think so, because look, we've seen these big giant companies try to develop competitors, and like Google had Google Groups for a while, was trying to compete with Facebook. Every company's tried to compete with YouTube. No one has succeeded. Sora now trying to supposedly compete with, the entire world was against TikTok, and somehow TikTok is still the most popular social media platform. Like, the United States was going to ban it and called it, a social media site run by, the Communist Party, and yet it's still the most popular social media site in the world. So Sora is not going to win that battle. They're a tool. They're not a platform. And everybody who's tried to mix the two has never really succeeded. So I don't really, TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, they have network effects. They've won for now. I mean, Google search engines are in question because of the competition coming from AI, but it doesn't seem, why would like all of our kids suddenly be obsessed with going on Sora when everyone's just putting their Sora videos on TikTok anyway? So it's not really that competitive. There's no advantage Sora has.
All right, Erik, let me jump over to you. In terms of Sora 2, video generation on social media, even if it's not OpenAI's platform, Is this a challenge to Hollywood or something that'll just sit comfortably alongside it and they'll both, coexist, or will somebody take market share from the other?
Yeah, I think market share has already been taken. And, one way of looking at the history of media is that the incumbent never sees the disruptor until it's too late, right? So it was radio to film and then film to network. And then in the late 70s, somebody was sitting around saying, how is anybody ever going to compete with NBC or ABC or CBS? The final of MASH has whatever, 112 million people watching. Cable comes out and it's two people on a crappy set and MTV and these junky videos, and the older generation never gets whatever the new thing is. And the problem with the conversation we're having today is that the framework is always that we're going to be doing film, an 80-minute film, and we're going to be doing 44-minute television dramas and 22-minute sitcoms. And it's like, that's not maybe what the future looks like. And you can see a massive panic in Hollywood as an example. Let's just take AI out of it for a minute with micro dramas. So now you have 55-year-old executives scrambling to watch reel shorts and try to understand what that means. And you might not understand why that's a thing, right? And a micro drama is really an extension of the gaming community. It's not an extension of Hollywood. It's coming from a completely different place. So let me ask a what if for the panel. Like, what if time shifting is already happening away from shows and films and to clips that are 60 seconds? And what if they're not 60 seconds? What if they're 20 seconds and they're 10 seconds? And people under the age of 20 are just flicking through them, right? That's already happening. The time shifting is already happening. The biggest network on your television screen is YouTube Shorts and anything that's less than 20 seconds that people can flick through. And so, if we go back to the start of the conversation, writers can't be replaced, but you don't need a writer to do a 20-second video where somebody falls off a cliff. You need the best algorithms. So really, we have to be asking the question of like, what percentage of view share 5 to 10 years from now is going to be film and television as we view it today? And I can guarantee you, I don't know the answer to that, but I can guarantee you it's going to be much, much, much smaller than it is in 2025.
I agree. Can I respond to that?
Yeah, please jump in.
Yeah. I agree with you, Eric. And I actually think that Hollywood's biggest problem is Hollywood. They're in their own way and they're not getting their heads out of the sand. And as a producer, as a filmmaker, I feel very comfortable to say that. Because if you think about it, Hollywood's always had this control over entertainment over the years. A long time ago, a long time ago, when you wanted to go see a new movie, you'd have to buy a ticket, go at the time that it was, right? And sit down. If you wanted to catch the latest episode of something, you got to make sure that your butt is in the seat at Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And remember you run back and forth to the bathroom for the commercial breaks. And so Hollywood dictated when and how people got entertained. And that was the way it went for a long, long time. That is not the case today. That is not the case with the creator economy today, which is nearly double the size of Hollywood by revenue-wise. Today, the audience dictates to us how they want to be entertained, whether it's on micro dramas, other short-form content, stuff coming out of the gaming world, movies, television series, whatever it is. It's up to us to answer the call. With these tools, if we get our heads out of the sand and realize that between Universal and Warner Brothers and Legendary are not setting the tone of what's entertaining, like what is the gold star of entertainment anymore, even though the quality is there and the creativity is there, but it doesn't mean that the masses, this is what they want to see 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And also, the short form content in this thing right here, this had a lot to do with where we got to. these tools are democratizing the process and opening up and leveling the playing field so that, as Erik mentioned, someone can go and make a 20-second, 30-second, 40-second kind of show for pennies on the dollar, but the difference would be is with the quality of it. I still think Hollywood has the chance because we do have the best writers. We do have the best creatives. That's bar none that make it into the industry.
James wants to just jump in here on a point.
Yeah, given all that, I want to ask you three people a question. Carmi, is a studio executive. Give him advice. What should he do?
You should listen to me.
So I'm curious what your advice is for all three of you. What your advice
by the way,
is for Carmi.
I'm an executive also. I'm the president of a mini major studio today. Still, I'm shooting a new Rambo movie starting in January in Thailand, traditionally. But I think we have to start wrapping our heads around how it is that we're going to entertain the audiences going forward, or listen to the call of what they want. And listen to the call of what it is that they want. I don't think, look, Legendary historically does things for great budgets for what they do. They don't go and spend, crazy amounts of money on something, even on some stuff they do. But I think we're coming to the point where the days of spending $200 million on a movie, on a visual effects thing, are really, really dwindling, and in my opinion, over. I think the days of spending $200 million on 150 different projects and getting it out there, those are the days that are starting to come.
All right, so we're going to have to wrap up. Last question, James. This seems to be a thesis if enjoyment can be measured in terms of dopamine release. If that's ultimately whether it's games or videos or shorts or vertical videos, is this all a pursuit of who can deliver the most dopamine at the lowest possible cost? Is that ultimately what this devolves into?
I don't know if it's the lowest possible cost. I think it's who can deliver the most dopamine, period. As Erik mentioned, YouTube Shorts is already bigger than all the networks. And by the way, TV and movie viewing on the networks between cable, broadcast, and streaming networks has actually gone up year over year. It's never really gone down in terms of minutes viewed. But YouTube and Shorts and TikTok and Instagram has grown much faster, and as Erik mentioned, is double the size as an industry. I just think, are faster videos better than Lawrence of Arabia? Not for me to say. Everybody has an opinion, but clearly younger generation appreciates those and views those, more than they view watching these TV shows or movies. Again, there's a role for storytelling, there's a role for TV and movies, but now these other entertainment fields are getting more profitable, are getting bigger, and so Hollywood sort of has to decide how much they're going to buy or build. You're going to have to buy some of these micro studios or build yourselves and make a commitment to these shorter form entertainment.
All right, that's great. Garrett, do we have time for questions, or do we need to wrap? Any questions before we wrap? There's one back,
All the way
there.
back there.
There's one over there.
Where's the other one? Okay. Hi, thank you guys for being here. I was just wondering, how do you foresee line items so if a $200 million movie is going to not be a thing anymore, how should producers budget accordingly and taking AI into account?
I mean,
What was the question? I'm sorry, I couldn't.
the question is, how do producers budget and taking AI into account? And I think we're always trying to reduce the cost. I mean, I think one of my big campaigns, and the reason I even focus on this issue is because I see what's happening in the maker economy and the vertical videos, and I've taken my co-president at Legendary over to see Darman Studio for the specific reason of this is the competitive environment that we work in. We have bid shots like a age reduction in our characters to AI companies. The cost is so far had come back more than if we just went through the conventional means and did it through, you know, like a normal visual effects process. So there's a market competition that will continue to bid things out, and we assume that a lot of our visual effects vendors, we're going to put continual pressure on them to drop their costs, because I want to do more in terms of visual effects. I want to open up the spectrum of what's possible in a show. But I know that we keep shows on the air by controlling our costs or even lowering them. And that's what the streamers and broadcasters that we deliver for, that's what they're looking for, because they have their own competitive set, because their marketplace has gotten a big bite taken out of it. So there's a natural market effect. I can't tell you the specific way, but there's lots of line items in the budget, and we'll be looking at all of them. And just to go back to Yoni's point, we would never spend $200 million irrationally. We're a very disciplined business. The only way we would spend that if we thought there was a big return as a result. Gentleman in the back.
I have two questions. I'll try to make them brief. So one is, how much is this conversation just about generational bias? And I'll be specific. So Sora 2 blew up over the past couple of weeks. And what I was seeing was generational bias getting exploded on its head. So for instance, I'm seeing MLK dancing with Michael Jackson, totally out of context. Either they're telling jokes or what have you. These are things that neither of them did. I grew up with the memory of MLK, like small footage of him, right, giving his I Have a Dream speech. You have these kids now, they have low attention spans. They have no connection between context and meaning, so they can start from these videos and be like, hey, this is good. This is where my memory will start. So that's one question. And then the second question is, we talk about sort of morphing into understanding what does the user want. Well, these tools really are just proliferating use cases for them to create, co-create, if you will, with brands and Hollywood studios. So how much are studios, and this can go to Erik or Michelle, how much, or you, Carmi, how much are studios open to lending their IP for co-creation with fans, for some sort of co-participation, which changes the business model, but it's reflective of their behavior, which is, hey, they're going to take stuff and remix it anyways.
I don't know if Erik, Michelle, Yoni, did you hear the question? Or...
Yeah, I did. I could speak to the last part. We're actually exploring, on the Millennium side, combined with Arcana, we're exploring giving audiences the ability to create with some of our IP within models that we're going to train that are specific to one of our films, one of the worlds, whether it's Expendables or Has Fallen or Rambo or something like that. We're actually exploring that because you're right. People are going to do it anyway. And we might as well empower them to do it. And we look at it as potentially the test. The question is it marketing that'll help drive the audience more towards and become more aware of a brand that's disappearing? So we're looking at exploring that and experimenting with it to see what happens.
Yeah, from a legendary perspective, I can tell you that we're going to be very conservative and very careful about how our IP is handled, and we're going to be absolutely sure of when we make a move into that space that it's the right move and it makes sense and that there's a holistic business reason for doing it. On the first question about generational bias, like are there things that people of a certain generation have respect for that people of a younger generation don't have as much respect for and think can be used? Is that
so
like open, like free use?
Yeah, so I'm really coming back to where the tension is. It feels like there's resistance to accepting that maybe the newer generation, with the use of some of these tools, don't have context and meaning for these memories and the way we should apply principles to IP over memory, right? That's really what the valuation of a catalog, the valuation of our, right? That's really what these assets are coming from. And if you have a newer generation, ultimately, which we all agree are shortening their attention spans, this idea of memory, right, rooted 50, 60, 70 years ago to what I'm using like as MLK, which is out of context, him dancing with Michael Jackson. It's like, does that make sense? How do we reconcile just a shift in behavior in terms of what is remembering and what is, what we should keep and value as memory to extend IP?
Yeah, I'm really big on the idea of respect.
Of course.
And I think that's why, when I was asking Erik about how laws are going to have to change, I think that something's going to have to change so that you just can't take somebody's image and use it any which way you want to. But Erik, how would you answer that?
So there's a whole business now at the agencies of protecting life after death rights. A couple years ago, there was a James Dean movie that was going to be made that was actually financed and had James Dean's image in it. And Susan Summers, the widow of Susan Summers was licensed, has been shopping around the idea of doing Three's Company with virtual Susan Summers. So there's all these kind of weird life after death things happening. But what are the real implications for the business? Which is, if Carmi spends hundreds of millions of dollars building out a Dune franchise, and just let's put the life and death thing aside for a second, and anybody can use it, it will devalue his studio and the downstream effects of what he's been trying to build. And what happens is studios will cease to exist. People will stop investing in IP because the residual value of that IP will be less and less and less. And on the other hand, like if I'm Disney today, and I'm looking at Deadpool, like Deadpool should 100% be turned over to the fans to do zany stuff with Deadpool, because that would absolutely be right for the brand and would absolutely build out other layers of revenue for Disney. And so what we're looking at are 3 points on a triangle that are sort of in conflict in my mind, which is, how are we respectful for artists or IP that spent years and years building their lives or reputations, or in the case of MLK, his whole political body? How do we protect the value of studios? And then also, how do we get studios to be flexible enough to take advantage of these new technologies so that users and fans around the world can be promotional tools? And like we've mentioned Darman a couple times, like there's people who are thinking about these things in fresh ways. And in my mind, those things are all kind of in conflict. And sorry, one other implication is, like, if you don't need to, if you can have life after death rights of Susan Summers, why reboot Three's Company? Like, actors stop getting, there's all these sort of very grim implications if the world is just anybody can use any image for anything, whether it be a studio or somebody doing it as a fan.
Should there be a restriction on doing something with MLK and having him say something that he didn't say?
Absolutely. I mean, that it's dangerous as a political movement because there's going to be deep faking all over the place. And it's I think people are going to need to be able to protect their fundamental life rights in some ways that's not happened today. And that's got to be part of how media progresses. I mean, think how creepy it would be if anybody could create an image where any public figure could say anything.
Yeah, I think it's frightening. James.
I mean, the problem is, though, that's already happening, right? So
Yeah.
ever since the beginning,
I don't think this is a new problem.
It's not, but
Right.
it's
We're always able to deep fake with Photoshop.
Exactly.
and I think, though, maybe your question too was from an artistic perspective, like, is the younger generation, is this disrespect kind of ignoring, you know, what MLK stands for, who Michael Jackson was, and so on? And I would argue in every type of art, whether it's music, literature, painting, movies, one generation is always, you know, the newer generation is always accused of that disrespect. Maybe not to this extent, like what you're describing, but if you think about the art world, even going all the way back several hundred years, or literature, there's always that disrespect that the new generation has for the older generation. And so I don't think that's a new thing necessarily. It's just going to happen.
Look, this is a super interesting conversation. Maybe we can continue it, you know, like you and I will be here. I want to thank the panel, Erik, Michelle, Yoni. I appreciate you being here. This is a great conversation. Maybe there's a round two at some point. Guy, yes.
By the way, thank you to our panelists on the side. This panel could go on forever because everybody's still engaged and I still see hands being raised.